Committee on Arts, Culture, and Special Events. Thank you for being here. I want to remind everyone that this is a public hearing and it's being recorded and broadcast live on channels 8 for Comcast, RCN Channel 82, Verizon 1964, and webcasts live on the City of Boston's website. I want to ask everyone in the chamber to please silence your cell phones and other devices. We will have the opportunity to take public testimony and would appreciate that you sign in if you'd like to testify and that you start your testimony by stating your name and affiliation and residence. Today's hearing is on docket number 0257. This matter is sponsored by the mayor and was referred to the Committee on Arts, Culture, and Special Events on February 7th, 2008. Docket number 257, message and order approving the City of Boston to accept the right to enforce a use of restriction to ensure that the Huntington Theatre continues to be used as a theater or similar cultural use. We are joined today by members of the administration, and I'm going to ask you to each introduce yourself for the record, stating your name and department titles. I'll begin with you, Joyce.
Policy and Planning for the Mayor's Office.
Wonderful, thank you.
Development Review at the Boston Planning and Development Agency.
Okay, if you'd like to begin with a presentation, and I'll just have a few questions that you may already answer for me in the presentation, and then hopefully we can get right to public testimony and wrap up. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm here to testify in favor of Mayor Walsh's taking action to sign a declaration of restricted covenants at 264 Huntington Avenue, through which the City of Boston obtains the right to enforce a use restriction that requires the owner of a property to continue to use it for theatrical, cultural, live performance, educational, and ancillary activities. As background, the Huntington Theatre Company was founded at its current location on Huntington Avenue in 1982, and over the past 35 years, it has played a critical role in the cultural fabric of Boston, including the construction of the South End's Calderwood Theatre in 2004. With the sale of its home by longtime partner Boston University in 2016, the Huntington faced an uncertain future. Fortunately, after considerable dialogue with the Mayor's Office, the BPDA, and the Huntington Theatre, the new owners, QMG Huntington LLC, were able to reach an agreement to preserve the theater while also pursuing redevelopment on a portion of the site. After more than a year of community and stakeholder engagement through the Article 80 Development Review process, the BPDA Board of Directors voted in December 2017 to approve a redevelopment on the site with a mix of preservation and new construction. The historic 264 Huntington Avenue building will remain, continuing to serve as the hub of the theater's activities, while also having the potential to add 37,000 square feet of loading, office, and rehearsal space. The buildings at 252, 258 Huntington Avenue will be redeveloped, replaced by a 426-unit, 405,000 square foot residential tower that includes 14,000 square feet of space that will provide the theater with a new accessible entrance along Huntington Avenue, as well as lobby, reception, and programming space over the first 2 floors of the building. An important outcome of the substantial dialogue that preceded the project approval was that the 264 Huntington Avenue building has been gifted to the Huntington Theatre Company. This generous donation will help to solidify the future of this important cultural organization for many years to come. Furthermore, in order to ensure that the building remains dedicated to a theater or a cultural use, the developer will impose a use restriction within the deed. The order is being considered today allows the city to enforce the conditions of the restriction, providing an added layer of protection, and ensures that the 264 Huntington Avenue remains the home to a theater or arts use in perpetuity. I'd also like to note that this type of public-private partnership has the potential to serve as a powerful example moving forward. Less than a year ago, the BPDA and the Mayor's Office released the Boston Performing Arts Facilities Assessment, identifying the needs, challenges, and opportunities facing our city in this space. The report specifically recognizes the collective efforts of the city, developer, and the Huntington Theatre Company to not only preserve, but substantially invest in renovation and modernization of the theater itself. It is my hope that the lessons learned during this process will lead to further successes that expand access to the arts for all Bostonians. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
I appreciate that. Thank you. If you could tell us what the legal, financial risks or benefits are to the city.
Certainly the benefits are easy to articulate. What we sought to do when we heard that the Huntington was going to be evicted from the building that it's been in for quite a long time, we worked diligently to come up with a creative solution so that the Huntington could stay where the Huntington has always been. The important thing to us, though, was that while we all believe the Huntington's going to be there for a very, very, very long time, we also wanted to make sure that in the event that the Huntington is no longer the occupant of the theater which they've been gifted, that the space was held for cultural use essentially in perpetuity. And so by creating this covenant and having it be the city with the approval of the city council, hopefully, the ones that proffered the restriction, that would provide us with great enforcement tools in the event that the Huntington is no longer the tenant of the Huntington.
And any risks, downfalls?
I don't really see any risks. I actually think that this is, I'm really happy to be here today on behalf of the mayor because I think that this deal that we were supportive of is a really great indication, a really great example of the kinds of things that we can do when we get creative and try to move developers to create places for cultural use and to preserve places for cultural use as we're seeing some displacement in some places of cultural use. So this, I think, is probably, of all the things that we've worked on since we've gotten here, I think this is one of the ones that we're proudest of. It really, it protects the Huntington, which is a gem. I think we can all agree. You know, the Huntington does so much, aside from producing great art, it also has incredible education programs. It's the Northeast home for the legacy of August Wilson, which I think we all agree is very, very important to the city. So there really isn't, I think the risk would have been letting this happen, letting the Huntington be evicted, and potentially creating a space that might not always be used as for cultural use.
And so the Huntington is clearly a community benefit. Could you speak just to the record of what some of the other community benefits are and what that process was in terms of how you got to that?
Question, and one that we're happy to talk about. I would say, just to add to Joyce's point, that the gifting of the theater from the QMG group to the Huntington Theatre Company is a private transaction. Within that transaction, there's a deed covenant. There's a restriction. The action that being considered today allows the city to also have oversight over that restriction, right? So it goes from being just something that could be enforced by the former site owner to now something the city can get involved with. And I think what's exciting is it allows us to ensure that we're part of the conversation of, in the unfortunate event that the Huntington Theatre Company no longer is in the space, allows us to be first and foremost in the conversation of what the use of that space is and maintain it in perpetuity. With regard to the overall conversation on the project, I would say there was at least 18 months of dialogue, the last year of which was substantial public process through the city's Article 80 development review and approval process. There were numerous public meetings, and I think a general appreciation within the community and also the arts community of this idea of a public-private partnership, so that you have a developer that was allowed to pursue certainly an urban mixed-use project that is consistent with size of scale and the products in the area, provides much-needed housing for the city, but it also identifies the ability to preserve a building that is historic, not only in its use and nature, but also in terms of its facade. So there'll be significant work done to the theater itself in order to restore it to its, I don't want to say former glory, I think that's too dramatic, but the opportunity to kind of make sure that the theater is revitalized in a way that its exterior matches the exciting things happening internally. One of the main community benefits that I'd like to highlight is the fact that the theater today is inaccessible. So it does not have a great ADA access point. So when we talk about making sure that we have access to all Bostonians, it's really important to remember that all of us are going to probably endure some sort of physical impediment at some point in our lives. And so we want to make sure that for all ages, all mobilities, the city of Boston has access to this space. And so this 14,000 square feet of cultural space at grade within the new building, where the new and the old buildings meet, there will be a brand new accessible entrance as well as lobby and reception space. That'll allow the theater to do work beyond just what's happening when you're sitting in a seat watching the performance. It allows for gatherings, for receptions, allows the theater to kind of have a more open approach to the community around it. If you've been to the theater itself, it's a brick and stone facade. You can't see in. This is going to be a 2-story glass space, and so the activation, you'll be able to see some of what's happening on the inside, on the outside, as people are walking by, creating this great new marquee. So we're excited about that. In terms of some of the benefits, there was substantial investment in terms of parks. So they will be working with. The project will be working with the Parks Department in nearby Symphony Park. The project will also be providing much-needed affordable housing in compliance with the city's IDP policy. So 13% of the 400 units will be on site, which is something we're also excited about. So we're getting housing, we're getting a preservation of a theater, which is not an insubstantial thing. There is no cost to the theater to get this new space. And it also identifies the opportunity for theater to have the space in partnership for ADA access, but also the ability for them to have an expansion of 37,000 square feet in the rear, which will allow them to hopefully in the future, after a capital campaign, have new rehearsal space, loading space, and office space. And so they can continue to consolidate their uses in one location as much as possible.
So just to clarify, all 13% is on site?
Yes.
Could you speak to how many jobs, just for the record, will be created in terms of construction jobs and permanent jobs?
If you give me a second, I can look that up.
Sure, thank you.
So in terms of, yep, I've got it right here. So I just wanted to find it. A lot of materials in front of us here today. So the project, I'll give you a couple things. So in terms of fiscal benefits, it's a $290 million project, $200 million in hard construction costs, and they will generate about $2 million in annual property tax revenue. There will also be 350 full-time equivalent construction phase jobs, as well as 40 new full-time jobs once the project opens.
And what kind of commitment has the city received that the developer will utilize MBEs and WBEs? And what percentage of MBEs and WBEs will be used for this job?
My understanding is that they will be fully compliant with the city's MWBE policy.
Wonderful.
In terms of those details, I think there'll be a reporting aspect throughout the construction process.
And in terms of the permanent jobs, so there's retail space coming on site. Are there any deals in place that would offer any kind of subsidies for small business owners to kind of come into the space?
I would say, so the short answer, no. There's about 7,000 square feet of retail. One of the things we're excited about is that the new residential tower has 21,000 square feet of space at its base over 2 floors. 14,000 of that is devoted to augmenting the theater space. But the idea is that the retail space will complement so that it can be a bit of a porous space, so that the restaurant can be a partner with the theater on certain types of nights, et cetera, and so that the retail space will, for lack of a way of putting it, talk to the Huntington space. The idea that you can go and have a meal and then walk right next door and go to the theater, that's the kind of thing we're looking for.
So are there any final comments that you would want to make in closing before I open it up for public testimony? I think I'm done with my questions.
I would just ask that the council look favorably on this. I think it's a needed protection. I think we all agree that cultural space is something that we want to protect from displacement, and this does that in a new and creative way. I think this is the first time that the city has done something of this nature, and I think it's a really exciting harbinger of things to come potentially.
Wonderful, thank you. So now, at this time, we will open it up to public testimony. Right now, we have Michael Massot, who wants to testify. If you could come to the podium, please. Thank you. Could you please state your name, your address, and your affiliation for the record?
I'm Michael Masso. I'm the managing director of the Huntington Theatre Company. We're located at 264 Huntington Avenue.
Thank you.
And I loved hearing John and Joyce speak. I feel a little bit like, is it Huckleberry Finn or Tom Sawyer who watched his own funeral? This was an extraordinary process for us. First of all, I think it's perfectly appropriate. It's so appropriate that if you, as our new district city councilor, are here as the head of the art subcommittee, I look forward to taking you around, showing you our space, and showing you what we're going to be doing there.
Thank you.
I am here to speak in favor of the resolution. Yes, it imposes restrictions on the Huntington Theatre, but it's restrictions that are perfectly consistent with our purpose and our mission and our values and the work that we're going to do. We're going to be investing somewhere between $35 and $50 million in the upgrade of this facility for the purpose of making it an ongoing, all-day-long space that not only serves the cultural community, and that not only serves our audiences and artists from around Boston, other cultural organizations, but our intention is to keep that 14,000 square feet portion of the space open all day long, to animate it with events, with meetings, with ways that the community can access it all day. We don't want to build this building just so that people can come for 3 hours at a time and then go home. We intend to make this a cultural hub similar to the way that we've done at the Calderwood Pavilion in the South End, but actually stepping it up a grade by providing incentives and opportunities for people to use it all day long. So we think this is very exciting. We think it should only be, in the future, a cultural a theater space, a performing space, a cultural space. We hope certainly that the council agrees to these restrictions on us. And I'll only say that when we began this process, there was a risk, as Joyce indicated, that the Huntington was going to lose the space. There was a risk that the space was not going to continue as a cultural space at all. The extraordinary partnership that we have benefited from, led by Mayor Walsh, but certainly both John and Joyce were extraordinarily active participants in this process. I think it is an example of public-private benefit, which is very exciting for us, has, I think, saved important services for 200,000 people and 35,000 young people a year, and we're very grateful for the enormous effort that it took. And this is another very important step in us bringing this to pass.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here with us today, Mr. Masso. If you don't mind, I'd just like to ask some follow-up questions.
Of course.
I love the work that you're doing at the theater, and I wonder if you could just speak to how the theater plans to continue to engage our young people, students in our schools.
Sure.
And making sure that they have access.
Sure.
And in particular, students from communities of color.
The Huntington, each year, we provide educational programs which service about 30 to 35,000 young people a year. Some of them are very straightforward. That is, we invite there are about 5,000 or 6,000 young people a year come to the theater to see shows. And when they see shows at the Huntington, they don't see watered-down productions. They don't see things that we intend for children, because we mainly, a lot of programs are focused on very young people, but our focus is on middle and high school students. So these are really intelligent, motivated adults who we service as highly intelligent, motivated adults. We don't talk down to them. We provide opportunities we have teachers and teacher artists and staff members who go to schools and help students prepare, but they get the real thing, and we have a relationship. I'll tell you a related story is that Liesl Tommy, there's a woman who's going to be directing a play in 2 months at the Huntington. The play will open in 2 months. It's called Top Girls. Liesl Tommy is an African-American woman who began her theatrical life when she came to a production of Joe Turner's Come and Gone, great August Wilson's first play that we did in 1986, and looked on stage and said, I can bring my world and my life on stage. And Liesl's coming back to direct for us. Liesl is a Tony-nominated director. we don't need to turn every student in Boston and in the region into artists, working professional artists, but we do that as well. Mostly what we're doing is demonstrating for people on stage that their lives, that they can see their lives reflected on stage in ways that matter. And so most of our programs, certainly the majority of young people who participate in our education programs are young people of color. Maybe I'd say 30 to 40% from the city of Boston itself, but then we do pull from outside the city and other school systems as well. And certainly, I think it is a true statement that the Huntington is the premier producer of plays by and about women and people of color in the city of Boston. So it is a focus of ours. It has been for decades, and it certainly will continue.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Are there others
You're
here
very
who would
welcome.
like to testify? Yes, if you could come to the podium and please state your name, your address, and your affiliation.
Hi, Councilor Janney. My name is Kelly Brilliant. I'm the Executive Director of the Fenway Alliance, and we are the 21 cultural and academic institutions in the Fenway. We are proud to say the Huntington Theatre is a member of the Alliance, and I just wanted to speak on behalf of the Alliance. We are also managers of the Fenway Cultural District, which was designated a district in 2012 by the Mass Cultural Council, and then again in 2017 with our 5-year renewal. In terms of cultural district status, in 1998, we were designated a cultural district by the former mayor of Boston, Mayor Menino. So we have a city history of being a cultural district as well as a state. We're deeply appreciative of the work of Mayor Walsh and his team, Joyce, John, and others for their vision and achievement in this wonderful effort. And we'd like to also thank the developer who had some vision and foresight to maintain the operating theater, which is really a core of cultural facility in our neighborhood. We love the idea that the proposal going forward that this would be a cultural facility pretty much in perpetuity, which is what we would like. It is a hub of activity in our neighborhood. We're blessed to have many cultural institutions, the BSO, the New England Conservatory, Berkeley, Mass Art, all of these in our neighborhood, and we feel they all create something bigger than just individual institutions alone. In fact, the theater is sort of a hub, even now, of community activity. So you'll see it really active at nights when shows are going on and people coming in and out, and then dining in the local restaurants in our neighborhood. And we're very thrilled that the theater is moving to make it even more of a community center with their new building plans. So I just wanted to say we see this as a wonderful private-public partnership with the City of Boston in a way to ensure that sometimes our struggling cultural facilities in Boston have a leg up and a way to remain, because in many ways they are the backbones of our community. So we heartily support this, and we thank you for giving us time to testify in support of it.
Thank you so much for being here. If there are no other people here to testify, this hearing is going to be adjourned.